Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a vast, labyrinthine city. The skyscrapers stretch into a starless sky, their windows flickering like dying neurons. The streets below pulse with millions of people, each moving with purpose, typing on phones, clutching coffee cups, laughing, shouting, existing. But as you watch, a chilling realization creeps in. None of them know where they're going. They're all following paths laid by hands they've never seen, chasing goals whispered into their ears before they could speak. You try to scream, but the sound dissolves into the cacophony. Your hands tremble. What if everything you've ever called meaning is just a shadow play? Now, turn that lens inward. You wake each morning to alarms, deadlines, and the hum of routines. You work, love, grieve, and dream. Yet beneath it all, a question gnaws. What's the point? Not in a childish or dismissive way, but with the cold clarity of someone staring at a map only to find all the landmarks erased. You've been told life is a story, a journey, a puzzle to solve. But what if it's none of those things? What if existence is a blank canvas, and the brushstrokes you call purpose are just patterns you've hallucinated to keep from staring into the abyss? This is the paradox Camus called the absurd, the collision between our hunger for meaning and a universe that offers none. But here's the twist. It's not the paradox itself that cripples us. It's our refusal to face it. We've built civilizations on myths of destiny, progress, and cosmic fairness. Yet these are not shelters, they're cages. And the key to escape? First, admitting you're trapped. Consider the man who spends decades climbing a corporate ladder, only to reach the top and find nothing. Or the artist who creates beauty to leave a mark, yet dies unknown, her work lost. Or the lover who swears eternal devotion, then wakes one morning to indifference. Each moment whispers the same truth. The scripts we follow are written in disappearing ink, but we cling to them anyway, terrified of the alternative. What happens when the scripts run out? You might say, but meaning is subjective. We create it. But here's the trap. Even that mantra can become a script, a cliché, a way to gaslight yourself into complacency. If meaning is whatever you choose, why does the heart still ache? Why does the void still yawn? Because creation, without confrontation, is just another evasion. You can't paint over the abyss. It stares back. So why do we keep running? Why do we trade our raw, trembling aliveness for prefabricated roles and borrowed dreams? Is it fear, laziness, or something darker, a secret hunger to be spared the weight of freedom? Camus once wrote that the absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. But what he didn't say, not directly anyway, is that this confrontation is also a gift. It's the moment the numbness cracks, and you feel, however briefly, what it means to be awake. But here's the catch. Awakening hurts. It means admitting that your job, your relationships, your virtues, even your suffering, might be part of the same desperate pantomime. It means seeing the maze for what it is. Not a puzzle to solve, but a prison to dismantle. And yet, what if dismantling it is possible? What if the key isn't to find meaning, but to transcend the need for it? This is where the escape begins. Not in answers, but in questions that burn away illusions. Not in hope, but in a clarity so sharp it could slice through bone. The next time you feel that hollow ache, that sense of being unmoored, don't recoil, lean in. Ask yourself, what if this emptiness is not a flaw, but a portal? The labyrinth has no exit. But what if you've been searching for the wrong door? You wake up scrolling, a dopamine drip of notifications, headlines, half-formed opinions. You order coffee, swipe left, consume content, perform productivity. Your life is an algorithm's dream. Predictable, optimized, frictionless. But somewhere beneath the data streams, a voice hisses, "You're not living. You're buffering." This is the hidden problem. The absurd isn't just a philosophical abstraction. It's a wound. And like all wounds, we instinctively reach for bandages, systems, stories, substances to numb the sting. But what if the bandages are infected? Freud called it the defense mechanism. The mind's acrobatic dodge of truths it can't bear. You bury the terror of meaninglessness under addictions, ideologies, even altruism. You chase validation in jobs that hollow you out, relationships that mirror your insecurities, religions that trade doubt for dogma. Nietzsche saw it plainly. He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. Yet here we are, monsters in human suits, devouring distractions to avoid the mirror. Consider the modern cult of productivity. You hustle, grind, crush goals, as if output could outrun emptiness. But this isn't ambition, it's exorcism. You're not building a legacy, you're screaming into the void, hoping the echo will prove you exist. Camus' myth of Sisyphus whispers, what if the boulder isn't a punishment? What if it's a security blanket? Pushing it keeps you from asking why you're pushing. Even rebellion becomes a trap. The teenager who rejects their parents' values often builds a new cage with the same blueprint. The activist who dismantles one hierarchy often climbs another. Sartre called this bad faith. Lying to yourself about freedom. You're not choosing your life. You're sleepwalking through a role written by ancestors, advertisers, or anxiety. Jung's shadow self lurks here. The parts of you that hunger for chaos, meaninglessness, even self-destruction. The parts you exile to keep the facade intact. But repression breeds monsters. The more you deny the absurd, the more it festers, erupting in midnight panic attacks, existential rages, or the quiet despair of a life half-lived. Societies weaponize this denial. Capitalism sells purpose as purchasable. Buy this car, earn this title, and the void will vanish. Religions trade certainty for obedience. Follow these rules, and death loses its sting. Even secular utopianism, progress, enlightenment, is an opiate, numbing us with the fantasy that history arcs toward justice. But as Schopenhauer warned, life is a pendulum swinging between boredom and pain. We've just learned to rebrand the swings as success and failure. The brain itself conspires against you. Cognitive dissonance smooths contradictions into coherence. You smoke despite knowing it kills you. You hate your job but justify it as practical. The sunk cost fallacy chains you to dead-end paths. I've invested too much to quit now. Even your memories are edited. Nostalgia airbrushes the past into a highlight reel, while trauma distorts it into a horror flick. You're not just lying to the world. You're lying to yourselves. Huxley foresaw this in Brave New World. Not tyrants, but pleasure and comfort would enslave us. Today, we self-medicate with streaming, shopping, scrolling, a soma drip that keeps us docile. The horror isn't that life is absurd. It's that we've built a world that depends on us never facing that fact. Yet the deepest root is older than philosophy. The fear of freedom. Erich Fromm called it escape from freedom, the terror of bearing the weight of choice in a silent universe. It's easier to be a cog in a machine than a free agent adrift. Every should you cling to, I should marry, I should own a home, I should believe in heaven, is a life raft in the ocean of uncertainty. But rafts can't sail. They just keep you afloat while the current drags you under. You've been trained to confuse comfort with safety, to mistake repetition for order, to trade the raw, electric chaos of being alive for the numb reassurance of being right. But what if the only way to truly live is to let the chaos in? The consequences of this evasion are unfolding all around you. Relationships crumble under the weight of unmet desires. Dreams curdle into regrets. The planet itself gasps under the weight of our collective denial. Yet you keep playing the game because the alternative, awakening, feels like stepping off a cliff. But what if the cliff is an illusion? What if the only thing holding you back is the story you tell yourself about the fall? You've felt it, the slow erosion of your edges, the way routines sand you down, smooth and featureless, until you fit neatly into the machine. Every evasion etches deeper grooves into your psyche. The autopilot commute, the rehearsed small talk, the curated Instagram self, these aren't just habits. They're rituals of surrender. And their cumulative cost is nothing less than your sovereignty. Cognitive biases are the invisible scripts of this surrender. Confirmation bias whispers, seek only the information that comforts you. The sunk cost fallacy hisses, persist even as the path burns you. The Dunning-Kruger effect assures you, you know enough to be certain, even as your certainty calcifies into ignorance. Your brain, that masterpiece of adaptation, becomes a prison architect. It builds walls of rationalization so thick you forget there's a world beyond them. Neurologically, the consequences are literal. The default mode network, a brain system linked to rumination and self-referential thought, lights up like a storm during moments of existential doubt. You mistake this mental static for thinking, not realizing it's a survival mechanism. Your neurons, primed to seek patterns, invent conspiracies, destinies, and divine plans to explain the chaos. Even your dopamine system betrays you, that hit of pleasure from a like, a promotion, a sugar rush. It's not joy. It's a chemical bribe to keep you chasing ghosts. But the deepest corrosion is spiritual. When you outsource meaning to systems, capitalism, religion, algorithms, you surrender your birthright, the capacity to author your existence. Your desires become echo chambers, your fears pre-programmed. You mistake comfort for safety, repetition for order, until your life is a Xerox of a Xerox. Each iteration blurrier, emptier. Viktor Frankl wrote that, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." But what if your why is a facsimile? What if the how is slowly killing you? Culturally, the stakes are apocalyptic. Consider the rise of authoritarianism not as a political shift, but as a collective nervous breakdown. When meaning collapses, the desperate clutch at charismatic strongmen peddling simple myths. Us versus them. The good old days. The Great Reset. These are not ideologies. They're opiates for the meaning-starved. Even progressivism can become a trap. A cult of optimism that mistakes hashtags for change, virtue signaling for justice. Meanwhile, the planet burns, species vanish, and screens glow brighter, numbing us into complicity. The personal and political are mirrors. Your addiction to distraction fuels economies that devour ecosystems. Your fear of vulnerability justifies surveillance states. Your hunger for certainty elects demagogues. This is the paradox of modernity. The more we flee the absurd, the more we entrench absurdity. We build smart cities to optimize life, only to find life optimized out of them. We connect through social media, only to deepen our isolation. The maze isn't just personal, it's planetary. And yet, the most insidious consequence is the silence. Not the silence of the universe, but the silence you enforce within. The stifled voice that once asked, "What if I'm wasting my life?" The buried curiosity about what lies beyond the script. The unshed tears for the self you abandoned to fit the role. This silence isn't peace. It's a living burial. But here's the catch. The prison you've built is also your sanctuary. The scripts, the systems, the stories, they're not just shackles. They're the only maps you've ever known. To discard them feels like stepping into a wilderness without stars. And so you stay, polishing your chains, calling them jewelry, even as they cut into your flesh, yet cracks are appearing. You feel them in the 3 a.m. dread, the moments when the autopilot fails. in the way art still moves you, or nature stuns you into awe-raw, unscripted, real. These are not glitches. They're fissures in the matrix, and through them, a question seeps. What if the only way to survive the absurd is to stop surviving it? The rebellion isn't about destroying the maze. It's about realizing you were never trapped. You're standing at a crossroads. One path is paved, well lit, lined with familiar landmarks. Duty, safety, approval. The other is wild, overgrown, and no map in sight. Your breath quickens. Every instinct screams to stay on the paved road. But then you notice something. The wild path isn't empty. Scattered among the weeds are fragments of lives fully lived. A painter's abandoned sketch, a poet's torn journal, a protester's faded sign. These are the breadcrumbs of rebels who stopped surviving and started living. The first act of rebellion is conscious absurdity. Camus's Sisyphus, the man condemned to roll a boulder up a hill forever, chooses to smile. Not because the task has meaning, but because defiance is the meaning. This is the crux. To stare into the void and say, I see you, and I'll dance anyway. Nietzsche called this amor fati, love of fate. Not resignation, but a furious, joyous embrace of the present. When you stop fighting the absurd and start using it, the game changes. The boulder becomes a canvas, the repetition, a rhythm. Consider the jazz musician who thrives in improvisation, the art of creating beauty from chaos. Or the Zen monk who finds enlightenment in chopping wood, carrying water. These are not escapes from absurdity. They're alchemical acts, turning meaninglessness into meaning. The trick is to shift from asking for purpose to being the purpose. Every mundane act, a breath, a step, a laugh, becomes a rebellion when done with full presence. The second act is radical authenticity. Sartre argued we're condemned to be free. No gods, no scripts, no excuses. But freedom terrifies. So we outsource our choices to society, to algorithms, to common sense. The rebel does the opposite. She owns her freedom, even when it hurts. Think of Kafka, writing in the margins of his bureaucratic job, or Frida Kahlo painting her pain into masterpieces. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't seek validation. They burned their way into existence. This isn't selfishness. It's responsibility. When you stop lying to yourself about what you want, you stop lying to others. The activist who risks arrest for justice. The artist who creates inappropriate work. The parent who chooses love over convention. They're not heroes. They're simply refusing to play a rigged game. As Camus wrote, the only way to fight the plague is with decency. Decency here means refusing to let the world shrink you. The third act is sacred disruption. The system thrives on predictability. So the rebel introduces chaos. Not random destruction, but the kind that shatters illusions. When Rosa Parks refused to move, she didn't just challenge segregation. She exposed the absurdity of racial hierarchy. When Galileo pointed his telescope at the stars, he didn't just prove heliocentrism. He revealed the arrogance of dogma. Sacred disruption isn't about grand gestures. It's about daily defiance. Deleting social media to reclaim attention. Walking out of a toxic job, saying, I don't know, when everyone expects certainty. These acts are tiny revolutions. They ripple outward, destabilizing the collective trance. The more people dare to live unconventionally, the weaker the maze becomes. But here's the paradox. Rebellion isn't a rejection of society. It's a reimagining. Camus called the rebel a builder of light. By refusing to comply, you don't destroy the world. You reveal its hidden possibilities. The beat poets didn't just write books. They showed millions how to wander. Greta Thunberg didn't just protest. She reminded a generation that outrage can be a compass. This is why the rebel is often lonely, but never alone. In a world addicted to conformity, authenticity is contagious. When you live unapologetically, You grant others permission to do the same. The walls between me and we dissolve. As James Baldwin wrote, you think your pain is unique, and then you realize it's the same pain everyone feels, and the world changes. But rebellion demands a price. You'll be called selfish, naive, dangerous. Relationships will fracture. The void will roar louder, yet this is the crucible where identity is forged. The old self, the one who played it safe, dies. In its place rises a self unafraid to be incomplete, to exist as a question mark. The ultimate rebellion, though, is joy. Not the hollow euphoria of consumerism, but the fierce, quiet joy of someone who's stopped running. It's the scientist who laughs at the universe's indifference, the mother who finds infinity in her child's eyes, the prisoner who etches poetry on cell walls. They've learned Camus's secret. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. You've spent years buffering. Now the buffer's off. The world is sharp, bright, terrifying, and achingly alive. You feel the weight of your freedom, the raw edges of your choices. There's no script, no guarantee. Only the next breath, the next step, the next defiant act of creation. The maze isn't gone. You've just stopped pretending it's a cage. You've been here before, in the split second between sleep and waking, when the world is neither dream nor reality. In the silence after a lover's confession, heavy with unspoken truths. In the moment you held a newborn's hand and felt the weight of eternity. These are the glimpses, the fractures in the script, where the universe whispers, "You've had it backward all along." The ultimate truth is this: the absurd is not your enemy, it's your liberation. We've been conditioned to see meaninglessness as a void, a black hole swallowing light. But what if it's the opposite? What if the absence of inherent meaning is the source of all meaning? Like a blank page that becomes a symphony only when you dare to scribble. The universe doesn't owe you answers. It offers something far greater, the freedom to create them. Camus' Sisyphus, smiling as he pushes the boulder, isn't resigned. He's enlightened. He's realized the god's trap was never the punishment. It was the belief that a life without cosmic purpose is a life without value. The moment Sisyphus stops begging for meaning from Olympus, he claims it. Each push of the boulder becomes a dance. The mountain, a partner. The absurd, his muse. This is the paradigm shift. You are not here to mean. You are here to mean. Nietzsche's Übermensch, the overman, isn't a superior being. It's anyone who rejects inherited truths and creates their own values. The rebel who finds joy in the climb, not the summit. The artist who paints because the world needs more beauty, not because beauty exists. The lover who chooses intimacy daily, not because soulmates are fated, but because love is a verb. Viktor Frankl, survivor of Auschwitz, wrote that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. But even Frankl's insight stops short. The final truth isn't that you can choose meaning, it's that you are meaning. A verb, not a noun. A process, not a product. Consider the quantum physicist who sees particles pop in and out of existence and smiles. The dancer who loses herself in movement and becomes motion itself. The child who builds sandcastles, knowing the tide will erase them, yet builds anyway. These are not acts of defiance. They're acts of communion. By embracing impermanence, they touch eternity. The maze, the void, the scripts, they were never obstacles. They were mirrors. The absurd reflects back everything you've denied. Your freedom, your creativity, your terrifying, beautiful agency. The moment you stop asking, what does it all mean? And start asking, what can I mean? The world tilts on its axis. This is why Camus wrote that the struggle itself is enough to fill a man's heart. Not because struggle is noble, but because it's alive. The climber straining toward the peak, the writer wrestling with words, the parent navigating sleepless nights. They're not chasing purpose. They're embodied purpose. And here's the final twist. You've always been free. The chains were never real. They were stories you mistook for skin. The shoulds, the musts, the if-onlys, they're not truths. They're tattoos you can choose to scrub away. The universe doesn't care if you succeed or fail, love or lose, create or destroy. It doesn't judge your art, your ethics, or your sins. It simply is. And in that indifference, you find your power. Like a sculptor facing a block of marble, the formless is yours to shape. So what now? You step into the labyrinth, not to escape, but to explore. You let the void be a canvas, not a chasm. You trade certainty for curiosity, answers for questions. You live as if every moment is both insignificant and sacred, because it is. And when the old fears resurface, what if I'm wasting my life? What if this is all for nothing? You'll smile, because waste and nothing are just words. The raw, aching, glorious truth is this: you are alive. Not as a character in a story, but as the story itself. Not as a seeker of light, but as the light. The screen fades. The city still pulses. The maze remains. But you are not in it. You are it. If this shook you awake, if you feel the tremors of the maze crumbling, comment below. With your raw, unfiltered truth, what will you rebel against? What's one script you're ready to burn? Subscribe to join a tribe daring to live beyond the labyrinth. This isn't just another philosophy channel. It's a rebellion. Ignite your mind. Shatter illusions. Let's build something real together. Hit subscribe and let the next video find you standing taller, eyes wide open, ready to claim your place in the absurd. The void is waiting. How will you fill it?